After a short off season, we're back with a brand new season for Austin FC and a brand new edition of Final Whistle ATX. Hey there everyone, Nick Bannin here with Wyatt and Harley, and we're here with another edition of Final Whistle ATX, the first one of Season 2. How about that?
Cheers.
Cheers everyone. Back here at BD Riley's. I've missed you guys at this table.
I know.
It feels like it's been so long, but in reality, the season ended like 3 days ago, right? It feels like the season just ended and we're back.
And yeah, I'm desperate for more. It feels like it's been forever at the same time.
What do we think about what Austin FC did during the off-season?
We addressed a lot of needs. We didn't address all of them, but being a first-year team, I don't know that you can necessarily come in expecting to solve all of your problems in your first 2 years, but I think we made a lot of improvements. I mean, how many times last year did we sit here and say, why is Berhalter playing at center defensive mid? He's a good defensive mid, but he's 20 years old. You know, we pride ourselves on being the best at what we do. Why are we playing a youth player at 20 years old? We went out and we addressed that. We signed 2 new defensive mids. Pereira's going to be a year better. So if you're asking me for a grade, I think I would give it a B. I think it was successful. It wasn't an A because I don't think we did enough to solve all of our defensive problems. But we brought in some guys who've been around the MLS, who are veterans, who can help us win right now, which is what we need to do. So all in all, I'll say a B. Wasn't the perfect offseason, but I'm glad we made moves. Like, that was one of the things I was looking to see. And we really brought in a lot of leadership, so I'm excited to see that.
7 new signings, Harley.
I agree. I think the depth has really improved from last year, and we kind of forget maybe, even though it's only a few months ago, that injuries really savaged Austin FC, especially through the first half of last season. Hopefully that's going to be better this time around, because with some better depth, you can handle those injuries a bit more. I'm not going to lie, I was going to say a B, but Wyatt said it, and I feel like I can't do that anymore. So I'll slide to a slightly lower. How about like a C+ if I'm being harsh?
There was B- in the middle, you know.
Yeah, I know. I just feel like there was nothing about the off-season that wowed me. And that might be unfair because I'm not sure what would have wowed me. I think maybe shaking up the designated players, you lose Thomas Pochettino, but you don't really gain one because Alex Ring, who is the new DP, was on the roster last year. And he's a really good player. I'm a big fan of Ring, but it feels like, is that the best use of that slot? I don't know. The defense might be fixed by the new additions. I hope so, but it may not be. They may not be improvements on what we had last year, and I still don't know if we have that true goal scorer that Austin FC is crying out for. So definitely some questions, but a cause for optimism, I think.
I think you brought up a great point with we got a lot of new signings and their improvements, but none of them are like this big wow factor of a signing. Yeah. This is obviously a very black and green table, so I think it's fair to say Driussi might be one of the best players in the MLS amongst us three, right? I don't know that we needed necessarily that big signing. I think we needed depth all around the field, which is what you said. But that's a great way to look at it, and that's why I think it's a B because, you know, we didn't bring in this massive guy, but what we did is we plugged in a lot of holes. Like I said with Berhalter, that's not going to be an issue this year. You know, we have 3 capable fullbacks between Hector Jimenez and Nick Lima and Kolmanich. We've got 3 guys who could start at fullback. We've got some competition at center back, not probably as much bodies as we want to see, but we've got a little bit of competition. So I think we did what we needed to do. You know, a very Claudio Reyna-esque, right? He's not known for these big signings. He's known for small signings that pack a punch, like Diego Fagundes, for example.
Poor Sebastian Berhalter, by the way, is just chilling in Columbus, Ohio, or wherever he is now, and just like he's feeling something.
Hey,
like,
listen, I like Sebastian Berhalter a lot. I think he's going to be a really good player, but if we want to be a team that competes for MLS championships, he wasn't the guy to play last year. Maybe in 2 years, he's going to be a force to be reckoned with in the MLS, but he's just not there yet.
Well, let's not also forget that some of the big signings that happened during the season last year have now got a preseason under their belt and will be able to start fresh. And that some of our best players coming from this offseason could be the ones that we signed last year that we saw some glimpses and sparks of, but we haven't got the best of them yet. And maybe this season 2 is going to bring that. What are you guys looking for as far as the big storylines to look out for and for people to look out for at home heading into season 2?
Well, we got rid of Berhalter and we brought in Owen Wolf. So I think that was a natural transition to go from the son of the U.S. coach to the son of our now coach, who was the former national coach's assistant. But actually, Owen Wolf has looked really impressive in the preseason. He's not doing anything wow, like we just talked about the wow signings, but I just noticed he's in the right place at the right time so often. The last game against Atlas that I just watched, he was in the box just waiting for a pass so many times, and he connected on a few. He didn't finish, but I just kept thinking, why is he there by himself? Why is there no defenders there? And he just finds himself in those positions a lot. But again, I famously didn't answer your question. So, storylines.
Let me ask you a question. I like Teen Wolf as well. I think he's a good player, but
I love the nickname too, even more than the player.
I was waiting for some kind of comment on that. It's not my own. I saw it on Twitter. Kudos to Los Verdes or whoever that was. How does Owen Wolf get minutes in that crowded Austin FC midfield?
That's one of the storylines to watch in general, is that midfield, because we went out and signed Felipe and Valencia, who are both very capable starters in the MLS. Valencia just won a championship in Colombia, and Felipe has been in the MLS for how many years? And Pereira, one of your favorite players, is coming into year 2. So are we going to see Pereira get some of those minutes, or Wolf? I would tend to think Pereira. I think it's going to be hard for Wolf to find those minutes.
So taking your not answer of my question and turning it into an answer of the question, one of your storylines of the season is fitting in all these new players with some of the existing quality players we already had and figuring out how some of the players get playing time.
I like how you just said what I said in like 10 seconds, and I took 2 minutes. Another storyline I want to watch, speaking of the midfield, is Diego Fagundes, one of our stronger attackers last year. He's typically in the midfield, which, as we've already discussed, is packed with talent. And then he played right wing because we didn't have anybody else, with Rodney Redes not fitting in. But Ethan Finley is a very capable right wing. So do we see him take those minutes from Fagundes, who's been a journeyman up to this point? I mean, he is the epitome of Austin FC, right? I mean, I think when you think Austin FC, you think Austin FC, you think Stuver, you think Fagundes, maybe you think Driussi. So I'm curious, where does Diego Fagundes end up? How much minutes does he actually get? Is he a guy off the bench? He might be. He might be. And
disrespect.
I mean, Ethan Finley is a solid MLS player, and he's a more natural right wing. So I don't know. Where does Diego play?
I didn't think you were going to disrespect me and
so
Austin
many
FC
players
like this in episode 1. I think Diego Fagundes is a core part of this team. I think the question for me is not what is his role in this team. I think it's, does Fagundes take the next step? Because he's had a really weird career. Normally with these guys who peak, or apparently peak really young and kind of tail off a little bit, you don't get that second wind. But Fagundes gets the change of scenery, and it's like a whole new player. This fire lit within him. I wonder if he still has that same level of motivation in year 2. I don't see why he wouldn't, because he's a hungry player, and he's, we know how good he is in terms of his just natural ability. But can he take that next step? And if so, what does that next step look like? Does that look like high-level MLS winger who is, in contention for the US men's national team? I don't know. That's possible if that's the next step. Or is it a guy who is not as motivated and kind of comes back to the pack a little bit? But I think he's an interesting name to watch. And another interesting name to watch, I think, is Maxi Urruti and Moussa Djite and whoever's playing number 9, because the storyline that I'm going to be watching for is, can Austin FC score enough goals? We know that it was a problem for a long stretch of last season, and it definitely got better towards the end, especially when Sebastian Driussi got settled. But is there a prolific number 9 in this squad? You looked at it last year and the answer was no. If you look at it this year, the answer might still be no. Urruti is not at his peak age. He's a little older. He's never really been an elite MLS striker, except like 1 or 2 good seasons. And I wonder if he's got that in him. It could be a Fagundes-like revival. I'm not sure.
One of the storylines no one's mentioning is, how long of a leash does Josh Wolf get this season? Season 1, hey, new season, new team, you get a little slack. Season 2, expectations are higher, which leads me to what should we expect from this team now, season 2, because it's got to be better than it was season 1. They had good moments. They had probably more bad moments. What are you guys thinking realistically this time?
He's got a year of experience under his belt, and he's got a lot of experience in general as a player, and like I said, being with Greg Berhalter for most of his career in the MLS. So I would expect to see less like, what was he thinking type of formations out there and players. So I think we're going to see Josh Wolf take a step forward, but you bring up a good point. How long is that leash? I mean, we're going to talk later about Cincinnati, not the best team in the MLS. What happens if we start out without a win in our first 5 matches? which we've seen happen before. So, I mean, it's not like it's outside the realm of possibility. With that being said, for me, you're asking what I expect. With that being said, my expectations for the year are to make the playoffs. I think we just talked about how much we got better this offseason. The guys who we had last year, who hopefully are going to be a year even better. I think Kolmanich can be the best left back in the MLS. I think Driussi can be one of the best players in the MLS. I think Cecilio can create a lot of opportunities for the guys around him. And he's finally going to get a whole year to play his natural position. And we've got depth everywhere. If he doesn't live up to the hype, Cecilio Dominguez, guess who we put there? Diego Fagundes. You know what I mean? We've got options at every position. So my expectation is playoffs. Playoffs or bust. I know we famously said that last year. It feels a lot more like reality this year.
Wait, what was the question again? I'm sure it was something
Expectations
completely
for the
unrelated. You want me to answer that? I can try.
I just asked Wyatt how his weekend was, and then expectations for the season.
Man, I think that playoffs has got to be, I don't want to say an expectation, it's got to be the goal. And it was kind of the goal last year, but I don't know how realistic that was in hindsight. In year 2, you've got to make a push for it. I think Austin is a lot better set up this year than they were last year for that to happen. But you look at the West, and the West is good. There are some good teams, like LA Galaxy have reloaded, and Portland finished the season so strong last year, and Vancouver finished the season so strong last year, and that's not mentioning Colorado and Kansas City and LA. And one of these good teams, Austin FC has got to overtake one of these good teams. Does that happen? I'm not sure it does. We know that there's quality in this team, and we know that they can win games, but can they win enough to get there, to get to that 7th place? I think it's going to be really close. And we're 1 year away, by the way, from Nashville joining the Western Conference, which is going to make it even harder. So I think there's some pressure to get in this year.
And you said it earlier,
yeah.
it's not like we're a perfect team. You know, we don't know who the answer is at striker. We still have some issues we may have to sort out at center back. So even though we added a lot of depth, it's still an imperfect team. So that's a great point. We're not just going to waltz into the playoffs. We've got to overtake one of those teams who's already been there, done that. So that's
And
a
we've
great
got
point.
Cincinnati coming up Saturday, 5 o'clock kickoff, home game at Q2 to start the season. Unlike last year where we had to play so many games on the road, that's hopefully going to help Austin FC out, although they actually had a pretty good run when they were playing away so much last time. That's a game you can watch on the CW Austin, and they've got this special pregame show this year as well. So the kickoff's at 5. Brief expectations against Cincinnati, which are thought of as a somewhat poor team.
My expectations are win. It's a really good opportunity to start the season right. You're at home, Q2 Stadium in front of all those fans. Another recent expansion team like Nashville, who I just incorrectly stated are a year away from joining the Western Conference. They joined this year, and I realized after I said it, so that's me tying that in together nicely. Thank you. Cincinnati finished last in the MLS last season. So every team, when they're playing Cincinnati at home, has got to be expecting a win. That's just how it goes. Austin FC's at full strength, we hope. No injuries. I expect a real statement game and a statement win from this game.
And Austin FC, we haven't talked about it much. Some of the preseason games, they've actually played pretty well against some pretty decent teams. They drew Atlas, and then they killed Houston 4-0, which was fantastic. That was probably one of the most resounding victories we've had against a Texas opponent anyway, in recent history anyway. So some of those practice games, they played Dallas and only lost by 1. We've shown some good things so far
Definitely.
in the offseason on paper, but now we've got to show them in an actual season on Saturday.
Yeah, and speaking of the Atlas game, we started a lot of guys who were going to be second stringers. And it looked like a decent MLS team out there, even with the second stringers. And the game completely changed in the second half when, especially speaking of Diego, he came in and completely changed the game in that second half.
That's true.
And then we famously made, I think, 9 substitutions at the same time. And it was back and forth. Atlas is a really good team, but you could really see the capability of this team with everyone out there. Driussi didn't even have his best game. He had a handful of turnovers. He looked a little bit like it's the preseason. He didn't look like he cared as much, but even still, like, he's so talented. So Cincinnati, I think you said it best. They've finished last place, I think, 3 years in a row. They're going through a transition this year. New GM, new head coach. They've got a lot of holes in this roster, especially in the midfield, which is, as we discussed, where we're strongest. So I expect us to dominate possession. It's going to come down to can we finish chances. This can very easily become a 0-0 game. That's very frustrating for Austin FC fans because we have 65% possessions, but we have 2 shots on goal. and I hope that that's not the case. My expectation is 2-0. I think we're going to dominate possession, like I said, and I think we're going to finish some of those chances. But this could be the first opportunity for us to come back and say, what the heck happened? You know what I mean? Like, I thought we solved this whole number 9 thing, but
hope not.
But I don't see this being a massive challenge. This could be. I think this is really important for Josh Wolf to come out and prove that he's adaptable, that he can find ways to win these games, and I expect that we will.
I think good for the fans too to see a winning team from the beginning, because many fans will remember sort of the general flavor of last year. There was a lot of losses, and for chunks of the season, not a lot of goals. But when we were scoring a lot of goals, we were also shipping a lot of goals. I incorrectly said we played Dallas in our final preseason game. It was,
Chicago.
of course, Chicago, which were a decent team. So losing 1-0 to them wasn't too bad. But I do know for a fact we play Cincinnati this Saturday with a kickoff at 5 p.m. on the CW Austin, and the preseason, the pregame show happening before that. And we're super excited for that.
Yeah, and I'm super excited to watch Kip Keller play at some point. He's going to be the best centre-back on Austin FC's roster by mid-season. Watch out.
I completely agree. I think he's the off-season edition of the year. I really do.
All right, lots to look forward to.
Cheers.
Certainly appreciate you joining us for another edition of Final Whistle ATX.
Cheers, guys.
See you
We
next
got to
time.
get you a beer next time, Harley.
Yeah, we'll
Cheers.
see.